Thank you, Bibi and choir. Can catch my breath after that one. Your Excellency, Sir Lady and Sir and Lady Turnquest, Right Honorable Prime Minister, Mrs. Ingram, representatives of foreign governments and regional and international organizations, former prime ministers and other visiting dignitaries, cabinet ministers, the President and members of the Bahamas Christian Council, Your Excellencies, the heads and acting heads of diplomatic missions, honorable senators, members of parliament, senior government officials, Progressive Liberal Party and Free National Movement Party officials and stalwart councillors, representatives of Daddy's Masonic Lodge family, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Ever since the early afternoon of Friday, 25th of August, 2000, when word spread that Dad was not doing well and that he was very, very low, we, his family, have seen an indescribable outpouring of affection for him from Bahamians of all walks of life. Not only from other relatives, close family friends, members of the clergy, and political colleagues, but people from all across the country whose lives Daddy obviously touched in one way or the other, including political adversaries. It was not until I heard and saw the personal tributes paid to him by some of his adversaries that I started to fully comprehend Daddy the man. Because, as I have said over and over again, we only knew him at home as Daddy. And Mr. Prime Minister, sir, at this time I wish to publicly acknowledge and thank you, sir, for not only what you said to us, the family, at the house last Friday, but for everything that you have done and that you will continue to do, sir. You see, it has been very difficult for all of us who are his children over the years to have had to cope with Daddy, the public person, Daddy, the politician, and even worse, Daddy, the Prime Minister, especially for myself, who has never been a fan of politics. You see, before 1967, we had a normal father who did Daddy things, and we only had to share him with his law office, and at that time, the fledgling PLP. Back then, he spent time with his PLP and his Bahamas, but it was comparatively minimal to what was to come. Between January 10th, 1967 and July 9th, 1997, Daddy adopted a second family with whom we have had to share him all those 30 years. For all of you, Sir Lynden Oscar Pindling, the politician, the former leader of the PLP, former Prime Minister, the man of the century, the father of the nation, has passed on. But for us, Daddy, honey, as Mommy called him, and Grandpa, or Papa, as Lynden said, is gone. He is gone to be reunited with his Mommy and his Daddy. I have done interview after interview over the years about Daddy, and I've always said the same thing. Daddy was, had always been, and was up to the day he died, simply Daddy to us, and nothing else. In the early years, we knew that he was a lawyer, and that was his job. Later, he became Prime Minister, but to us, again, that was simply his job, plain and simple. But today, I want to share with you some of the reasons why we grieve and why we had come to love our Daddy so much. You see, because he was Prime Minister and because he was a politician, he, and indeed our entire family, were always the subject of much ridicule, rumors, lies, you know the story. Take myself for example. Everybody knows my love for music. I'm even hiding behind it today with my friends here with me. You know, many have said, and even continue to say today, that Daddy forced me to study law and to become a lawyer. But instead, I wanted to play music full time. I can't begin to explain to you how untrue that is. You see, my daddy has always been my hero ever since I was a little boy. I not only loved him, but I revered him. Consequently, like many sons who held their fathers or who hold their fathers in such high regard, I wanted to be like him and to become a lawyer. And that is where the seed was planted. That stayed with me throughout my entire adolescent life. And consequently, when it was time to go to university, there was no question what I would study. It was my choice and mine alone. And even though I wanted so much to be like my daddy, isn't it amazing that it was never Daddy the politician that inspired me? For his entire 25 years in office, Daddy did all he could while raising us to ensure that we kept our feet solidly on the ground and never losing focus of what it was that he had become. You see, he never tried to influence any of his 4 children during adulthood. He let us be our own man and our own woman. Getting back to the music, Dad himself was a musician when he was younger. He inherited that from Uncle Luther from Ackland, and they handed it down to me. You just ask some of the elders of the beautifully Lutheran community of Savannah Sound, and they can tell you about him playing the piano there during the summers where he went to spend in his early childhood. He encouraged me with my music up to the day he died. For all the things that Daddy has been blamed for over the years, one thing he can truly be blamed for is introducing me to the carnival in Trinidad. He tried to get me to go for many years, and I kept resisting. But I went for the first time with him in 1986. Yeah, he caused that, all right. And I haven't stopped going since. Many have paid tribute to Daddy by saying he was a humble man and extremely down to earth. Added to these qualities is the fact that he was a strict disciplinarian, and he insisted on us children learning discipline, politeness, and respect. He made sure that we learned how to say please, and thank you, and yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, to everyone without exception. He told us that this was how his dad raised him, and he wanted to make sure that we were raised the same way. Whether it was before or after he became Prime Minister, Daddy always found time to be Daddy to us, despite how extensively busy he was. Everybody, and we're grateful, believe me, for the sympathy and the condolences, and they talk about how we had to share Daddy with the nation, and that is true. Daddy, many times, was hardly ever at home. But I can tell you, if ever there was a time that Mom had a problem with us, somehow Daddy appeared with that old belt, and you know what he did with it. On the other hand, and before he assumed high office, he found time to take Leslie and I at the time. We used to go to watch soccer on Clifford Park on Sunday afternoons, or tennis at the Gym Tennis Club on Wolf Road. I guess many young people wouldn't even remember that, and I'm not old myself. Or simply just take us as a family to Saunders Beach on Sunday afternoons. Even to Junkanoo on Bay Street at Christmas and New Year's. Of course, before he was elected to office, we went and stood in the crowd to see Junkanoo. And those were the old days when Junkanoo was a two-way parade on Bay Street, when the Valley Boys and the Saxons and the Vikings used to pass each other side by side in opposite directions. I don't know how Daddy ever got to see any of the parade because of how short he was, because he used to take turns putting Leslie and I on his shoulder to make sure that we could see. Even as we got older, when I went off to school for the first time in 1975 to Canada to do grade 13, and my following year to go to England to pursue my law degree, it was Daddy who took time from the nation's business to take me to these faraway lands. In fact, when I left for London in October of 1976, Daddy walked me around central London so that I could familiarize myself with the area. And for those of you who knew him, those short legs could really walk fast. I felt so badly for those Scotland Yard security officers assigned to Daddy because he really wore them out. In 1978, again, when I was 19, and my dentist said that I had to have oral surgery to remove all 4 of my impacted wisdom teeth. Yes, Daddy took time to accompany me to the hospital in Coral Gables to have the difficult surgery. I couldn't believe all the U.S. Secret Service agents that I saw, but because of who Daddy was, I realized that it went with the territory. It didn't matter though, Secret Service and all, he was at my bedside throughout the entire surgery. Leslie's recollection of this aspect of Daddy's life is sometime while he was a student at boarding school in Canada. Daddy was attending some Prime Minister's conference or the other in Toronto. As usual, he was on a very tight schedule. Somehow, Daddy had to find a way to sneak away to visit with Leslie, who was in a town only 60 miles east of Toronto called Port Hope. Realizing what little time Daddy had, Prime Minister Trudeau kindly organized a helicopter to take Daddy those 60 miles to fly to Port Hope to Trinity College School just to see Leslie for a few brief moments. Leslie was so embarrassed because of all the attention it attracted to him. But of course, the other students thought it was just so cool. Daddy did the same thing for Michelle when he actually took her to England to visit a few potential schools where she would study for her A-levels. Now, Daddy had a special place in his heart for his daughters, let me tell you. They got the little extra that Leslie and I as boys never got. While we were away in school, Leslie and I had to live in the dorms on campus. That was fine for us. No apartments or no flats, as they call them in England. Oh no, not his daughters though. Firstly, Michelle didn't find a school in England that she liked, but through one of Dad's friends, they eventually found a school in Switzerland called Le Rose. When Michelle moved from Switzerland to London, to the London School of Economics for her law studies, and Monique also went over to do her A-levels, no dorms for them. They got a flat. In Hampstead, no less. While I was in England, I had to run and take the public transportation, the buses and the underground. Oh no, not Michelle and Monique. They had a little car, which they called Harry. As for Monique, as he warmly accepted Danny into our family when he got married to Monique. This he did at a time when the rumor mongers in our communities were busy, saying that Daddy would never accept him because of his father and his sister, who is now the Honorable Speaker of the House, were Dad's political enemies. Danny says that Daddy proved to him the real man that he was inside by accepting him wholeheartedly and very warmly into the family. In particular, Daddy, at this time, Daddy has requested that I read and dedicate to you publicly a poem written by his father, Mr. Oscar Johnson Sr., and which was published in the funeral program for his late mother. The poem is entitled The Measure of a Man, and no, Bishop Thompson, is different to the one that you read earlier. The poem reads as follows. The man is no bigger than the way he treats his fellow man. This standard has his measure been since time itself began. He is measured not by race or creed, high-sounding though they may be, nor by the gold that's put aside, nor by his sanctity. He's measured not by social rank, when character is the real test, nor by his earthly pomp or show, displaying wealth possessed. He is measured by his justice, his right, and his fairness at his plate, his squareness in all dealings made, his honest, upright way. These are his measures, ever near to serve him when they can, for man is no bigger than the way he treats his fellow man. Yes, hearing all the stories on the call-in shows, the radio call-in shows from the numerous persons whose lives that touched, has truly made us all appreciate the man that he was even more, something that we never thought that we would be able to do. You see, Daddy taught his children the many lessons which have made us who we are today. Daddy, we were so fortunate to have a daddy like you, not because of what you had attained, but because of the human being that you were. Daddy, you had a whole nation that looked up to you. In fact, you are now known as the father of the nation. But I think I am justified in being just a little selfish today and say very proudly that you were our daddy first. You were our daddy before you won the government, and we loved you then. You were still our daddy when you won the government in 1967, and we loved you. You were still our daddy when they tried to blow you up in Marsh Abaco in 1972, and we loved you then. You were still our daddy when the press, local and foreign, said all those nasty, dirty things about you, but we rallied around you and we still loved you then. We loved you when you lost the government in 1992 and again in 1997. Thankfully, we said. Those losses gave your grandchildren, Lynden, Lauren, and later Holly, Andrew, and Danielle, the opportunity to get to know and love you as we, your own children, got to know and love you prior to winning the government in 1967. Daddy, we loved you in 1976 when we all learned shockingly that you had cancer, knowing that before that fateful day you had never, ever been sick, not even with a cold. Daddy, we loved you as we saw some of your friends at your bedside while you fought to the end last Friday. Daddy, we loved you even more, as I said earlier, as we heard the Honorable Prime Minister pay tremendous tribute to you at your bedside last week. Even when another of your political adversaries, Mr. Norman Solomon, came to visit you and wept as he saw the condition that you were in. Daddy, we loved you as we prayed and sang while we watched you struggle to breathe in that bed in Monique's room last Friday night, along with your pastors, with other relatives and close friends. And Daddy, we loved you as you slipped peacefully away into heaven early last Saturday morning, even more peacefully than the quiet revolution you and your fellow soldiers ushered into our beautiful country in 1967. In the past, so many have tried to judge you, but we knew it didn't matter then, and we are certain that it doesn't matter now. Since early last Saturday morning, you sat and appeared before the ultimate judge, and we know that he has accepted you. We were assured of this by your pastor, Pastor Michael A. Smith, at the service of Thanksgiving and celebration held at your church, the Hillview Seventh-day Adventist Church, on Saturday past. We are assured of this again yesterday by all of the pastors at the memorial service, and again this morning by Bishop Bryce Thompson. So we have no doubt, Daddy, that the ultimate judge has accepted you. Daddy, there'll be no need for your services, political or otherwise, where you are now, because there are no injustices there. There will be no need for your doctors or hospitals or medication anymore, because there is no cancer where you are now. All that remains for you to do is to find Grandma and Grandpa and spend the time with them that you were unable to spend with them while they were here with you. If you remember, your last words to us that we heard last Friday was, "Scoop me up, Daddy." We know, too, that Mrs. Johnson, Sylvia Johnson, won't be far away, because we know she has lots to tell you since she had a 6-week head start on you. And when you see her, please give her a big hug from Danny, Monique, and Danielle, because they said to tell you that they miss you. Miss her, I'm sorry. We know, too, that Mommy's mother, who we call Mama, who those of you know as Cousin Mermy from Long Bay Keys and Andros, she probably knocked everyone down trying to get to you when you arrived, because you know how much your Andros family loved you. Daddy, you'll be able to spend time and catch up on old things with your old friends like Samilo, and Mr. Shadrach Morris, and good old Mr. Andrews himself, Mr. Clarence Bain. And when you see your good friend, Mr. Sammy Isaacs, remind him for me that you and I moved in right next door to him on Dog Flea Alley with our new office a few months ago. I'm sure that you and Sir Cecil will reminisce about the rabble-rousing both of you caused here in the 60s and in the 70s. And I know that you and he will chuckle even more about the day his grandson Kenneth and your grandson Lynden broke Mr. Hall's window behind the office, throwing stones at the pigeons on his roof. Then there are your other friends like Mr. Percy Munnings and Mr. Everett Bannister and Mr. Cecil Gonzalez and Miss Jalila Bain and everyone else whom we had the pleasure to meet over the years who have predeceased you. We had the privilege to meet them because they were your friends, Daddy. They're all there waiting for you. Daddy, we all miss you. Mommy misses you even more. But be assured, the close-knit family that you left behind, we will take good care of her until she joins you. Even though she says she ain't going nowhere right now. Daddy, we are proud of you. Daddy, the nation honors you. We, your children, and mommy, and grandchildren, honor and adore you. We will surely miss you, but we all hope to see you again one day because you truly are our hero. May he rest in peace. And in leaving, once again, I'm going to invite some of my friends from Visage, past and present. They're going to do another tribute to Dad, For You Were the Wind Beneath Our Wings. Thank you.